So for those of you who don't know
Hey guys,
him,
how's it going?
it's this exclamation guest in my chat, but Brian's been with us a couple times. He joins Devin and I from time to time. He also is our conduit to these galaxy brain guests who, honest to God, Brian, it's impressive that you can pull in people who have done original research on relevant concepts like the impact of uncertainty on household spending, the fact that we could quiz a guy who's familiar with that, has thought about it, has ideated the concepts is just amazing. So not only are you a welcome guest yourself, but you have a contact list that, like, I don't know, it's incredibly impressive.
Yeah, you're like crushing it, dude.
Yeah.
I'm happy to do it, but they're really coming for Twitch chat. You know that, right?
Of course they are, right? Well, yeah, he's a cyberpunk fan. Like, Twitch is his natural element, even if he doesn't know it. So
he's already one of us, you might say.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Thank you, sir.
The tagline in. That's wow, Devin. That's a way to advocate. That's amazing. So before Brian jumps in, I want to give a little bit of an arc of something I'm putting together, and I'm doing it with Devin. I think a lot about how this is the biggest event, certainly of the decade, but possibly of my professional career. The COVID, it's throwing all the rules up in the air. It's throwing the economy up in the air. It's throwing the future of how we work up in the air, that probably remote work will be a major component of life forevermore, and in a transformative way. And so I'm trying to line up guests who can help us make sense of this. So Brian and Scott were guests to make sense of the economy. Next Tuesday, we'll have Dr. Vincent Racaniello back, who's the virology professor from Columbia University. Devin will co-host with me then as well. And my topic for him is going to be, how can we go safely back to work and safely back into society, right? What do we know about the epidemic side of reopening the economy? So we just heard a little bit about the economic side of reopening the economy. Then we'll do how to reopen the epidemic side, or the pandemic side. And then I'm working on, and I'm in touch with Dr. Kanagia's team. Either I'll go on his show or we'll do a joint show or something to talk about the emotional side. Being scared about going back into the world, which a survey of my team, when we polled them today, we talked to 11 people as a sample. It's not scientific. Basically, their interest in going back into the office was hell no, on various, variations of that.
Why? Was it because of COVID, or is it just because they're like, fuck the office now?
Yes. It was both.
Yeah.
Well, so my average team member, it turns out, has about a 2-hour per day commute.
Jesus Christ, that's like some Chinese shit.
That's round trip.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah.
an hour in and an hour
Like-
back. And I want to be clear. That's not a scientific average. That's people who've chosen to talk about their commute. So I'm guessing it skews higher than the people who are living in apartments a few blocks away.
Yeah.
But right now they're saving those 2 hours of time. But it's also, we use something, and certainly this is not anything secret. We use high density seating, right? We use open floor seating plans with people close together. And the result is, we're going to have to make changes if it's necessary to have social distancing, which we all expect. I don't want to go too much into Amazon, but the point is, I think this is going to be common in a lot of businesses. Moving forward, though, I want to, with Dr. K, I hope to talk about fear of the virus, but also fear and uncertainty in the type that impacts the economy that we just talked about with Scott. Like, if I'm afraid I'm going to lose my job, if I'm afraid my income is unstable, if I'm afraid, of all kinds of economic impact, how do I manage that fear? And so the point I'm making for all the people I coach, and we do this on Devin's channel as well, if you want to lead, part of leading is getting good information and being intellectually curious because being a little bit ahead of the curve on what you know and understand makes all the difference in terms of, being able, whether it's to be a successful business, a successful entrepreneur, successful in your career, being a little bit more right and a little bit sooner is huge, right? It's called first mover advantage. So enough advertising. I just want to explain, well, it's not about advertising. It's about explaining there's this arc of information gathering. And I'm honestly doing this both to share it and selfishly. I want to hear what all these experts have to say that I can go apply. And I'm sure, Devin, for your part running Nerd Fusion, it's the same. Like, the better informed you are about the future, the better decisions you can make for your business.
Yeah, to some extent. I mean, I think also one of the things that I'm thinking about a lot right now is just like raw execution. For us, it's just sales, right? So we're just thinking like, one of the things, if we get that government stimulus package, I'm hiring right away, right? And I'm hiring a campaign manager and I'm hiring another salesperson. And if I can do that, it's going to go crazy because like my business has the opposite problem, right? We have so much inbound because so many people are trying to transfer physical over to digital marketing plans that like we don't even know what to do. We can't handle it to the point where I've actually even been streaming less because I've been doing so much on the agency side. So to some extent, there's too much information. There's like it just seems
how to
like
filter it. Yeah.
And so one of the things that I appreciate about the stuff that you've been setting up recently, Ethan, and also your Ethan's been carrying me pretty hard the last like couple of weeks just because I've been having personal. I'm having a very difficult time with my content. I'm in a serious existential crisis. And Ethan has been bringing me on these shows. It's been really, really cool. But I think one of the really big things here is like, in terms of content filtration, the shit that you're platforming is actually really stuff that people need to know. And I think that's very important. That's really good.
Thank you, Devin.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, we poked Brian. First, go ahead and reintroduce yourself to the audience, and then I have an easy softball question for you to get you rolling.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Weller. I'm Director of Data Science at Twitch, also an economics professor at Duke. I've been on the show twice now, so I'm expecting a jacket or something. Ethan, Devin, you can ship it to my North Carolina address.
Just post your address.
Thanks for having me on again.
Just post your address in chat, and I'll make sure to get it right to you.
You'll get a lot of things.
Yeah, you get plenty of things. Yeah,
I'll get a lot. That's right.
I got a couple long rubber things that look like towers to send you. Yeah.
Family-friendly stream.
I didn't say the word. I didn't say dildos.
Oh my God. Okay. This is where I can hear my mods reminding me why Devin is not always an asset.
Everybody gets one from me.
Before you weigh in, Ethan, I just wanted to thank you also as someone who's in the Amazon ecosystem. Thank you for putting on certain trainings, making them broadly available to the world and to my team. It's been helpful hearing from the guests that you've been bringing on because we're all navigating this challenging time together, as you know. Yeah,
it's tough. But look, I don't hide this. It's on my LinkedIn right now. I made a post today about how I've realized like my whole career has been leading to this point. I've been training on how to lead and manage, and now I have the management crisis of a lifetime.
Dude, I read that was some motivational shit, dude. Ethan posted this like 2-paragraph thing that he's like, we as leaders are going to get together and make it happen. I'm so motivated to like in this changing time. And I'm like, holy shit, man. Look,
my streaming schedule is so full with these guests. I don't have a chance to talk about this. So I'll do it here real quick. Long ago in my career, I had a crappy boss. And he was a nice guy. Someone will quote this to him. That's not my point. I had a boss who wasn't delivering what I needed, and he wasn't delivering what my peers needed. And so we band together to form a shadow government within the team. Like, he wasn't getting us what we needed, so we just set up our own private staff meeting, and we started managing our own, business by banding together and figuring it out. And we didn't dishonor the boss or ignore him, but we just did what we needed to do where he wasn't available. And I would, without getting into any politics, you will notice that 3 different sets of governors crossing party lines have formed shadow federal governments. The Northeast, the Midwest, and the West Coast have each had governor coalitions band together and say, we're going to work together to work on this crisis in our region. And that's a form of self-organizing shadow government. And the point is, that's going to happen in our workplaces too. Like, this is the most interesting leadership laboratory, because spelling it out, every leader, whether in business, politics, sports, state, local, federal, country level government, has been dealt the same crisis at the same time. Tanking economy, dying people, uncertainty. And they all have been given the same case study at the same time, except it's not academic. It's like, here, act. So yeah, Devin, when I'm like geeking out on this in a way that makes me unable to focus, it's because it's the biggest leadership laboratory since World War II.
Yeah, I thought it was like really cool that you posted that. I read the whole thing this morning, and it was like, it's a very cool thing to see somebody of your caliber be posting something that, because it's like, I think a lot of people are like, we're totally fucked, and you're like, this is the time of our time.
Yeah, it's the time to
make
rise.
shit happen.
It'll be our finest moment. And you see that, a few weeks ago, everybody was short of personal protective gear, and like how many small shops and whatever, like, I don't know, we have maker bots, we can print face shields, and I don't know, we normally make underwear, but we can stitch masks. And the American economy, and the world economy for that matter, it's not America, is incredibly resilient. So with that, my softball question though for Brian, to come back to our guest, sorry man,
Brian's just be sitting there for like 20 minutes.
Like,
wow,
he's
cool.
he's a wonderful guy.
It's okay. I'd practice with Cam.
My softball to you is, what did you think of what Scott had to say, and like what do you want to follow up or extrapolate on from your friend?
Oh gosh, complete bonkers. No, it is great. Scott's terrific, and he's done some of the first analyses of how the economy is doing in this COVID world in which we live. So you can find some of his research highlighted at the National Bureau of Economic Research and The Economist, because we just don't have that much data other than some of the stuff that he's looking at and some of the stuff that he's processing and continuing to process in real time. I would amplify his early point about the disconnect between the markets and the perceptions of how the economy is doing. Cumulative discounted profitability of firms forever going down by 20% doesn't sound totally crazy.
English.
Call it. So why are stock prices as they are?
Good.
Because they are the average discounted future cash flows coming from firms.
No,
slightly better.
Do you want to take it, Devin, or me? Stock prices went down because the future of economy companies aren't as bright, so they're not worth as much.
Good.
Sure.
We did it. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's only down 20% because this is a bad year, and in Scott's modeling, next year is a bad year too. Obviously, there's a lot of uncertainty around that, but it's not forever. And firms are typically around for an awfully long time, especially those in the S&P 500. Other points, the model that he presents is a model. It is calibrated to past data, but it this time is different. And it's always easy to say, and certainly during the financial crisis in 2008, we had plenty of folks say, well, this time's very different, and we should have unconventional monetary policy and such. But this time clearly is. There isn't a parallel in our lifetimes. The only parallel that we can really think of is maybe 1918, but certainly our economy is different from then. And the range of responses that we could take are potentially different from then. Certainly the fiscal and monetary firepower that we can bring to bear and are bringing to bear are different. So I would hope that the recession that we have is a little bit less pronounced, but we will see. It depends on updates that we get by the day. You can read on clinical trials, and those will make the stock market move up or down depending on their success or non-success. So there's a lot of, as Scott calls it, uncertainty. I'd like to mention that uncertainty and risk are not quite the same thing. So Scott makes a career of this distinction. Risk are the known unknowns. So these are things that you can assign a probability around. So I think there's a 10% chance of the stock market going down by X and 20% chance of the stock market going down by Y. That's risk. We can plan around risk. Uncertainty are those things that you can't even put probabilities around. You can't even gauge how likely is it for something to happen because you don't really have reasonable models. And we're kind of in that zone right now. So when he says that uncertainty is shutting down investment in a big way, that's above and beyond just normal risk being high. That's us not knowing of the sort of latent things out there that could take us by surprise. Plenty of other things to talk about. Probably not so much on esports, though, Devin, you probably know more on that than I do. It's certainly something that Twitch and others might be looking at to understand how sports and esports are evolving in the next couple of years. Of course, this is a time for me to say nothing I say is on behalf of Twitch or Amazon.
That's right. And me either. That's well known.
Me either.
Yeah. All right. Go ahead, Devin. You're up.
So along the lines of the second thing you said, which is like risk is not risk is not uncertainty. That's the easiest way to say that. I didn't really get a clear idea from Scott, and since you're more of a markets guy, I didn't really get a clear idea from Scott as to why the markets are responding in the way they like. I would at least expect at this point that the just like devastating stats that are coming out would be priced into like a flat, if anything, or declining curve. But we're seeing these massive jumps every day on the markets. You know, Dow futures are just going crazy up every day. I didn't get a good sense of why that was. I don't think I completely understand. Is it just that the economy, and I like Scott's answer, I think, was maybe that the economy or that the just the implication of the government putting that much money into the economy is that significant, which then drives me to think, well, does that have further implications on the devaluation of the dollar or things like that? That whole kind of like relationship I didn't really get.
Yeah, so just start off with a sanity check. If you look at United Airlines stock price, they're down 60%-ish.
Yeah.
So things that clearly are not coming back in a big way anytime soon, those are hard hit in ways that you totally understand. And the rally that you're seeing in the aggregate stock market is not reflected there. The news that's coming in that is driving the rest of the stock market up is not changing the fact that airlines are in a deeply bad position today. And potentially even worse than what we had after 9/11. So it's really catastrophic. Now, what's the stock market responding to day to day? Now, reading tea leaves is not my profession, and a lot of it is reading tea leaves. But there are some things that you can point to that the stock market jumps the moment the news comes out. So, for example, remdesivir. When there are clinical trials, the outcomes of clinical trials, or not clinical trials, of trials on monkeys comes out saying, oh, well, it seems like might be effective. The stock market jumps at that point in time. Why? Mm-hmm. Because it revises expectations on what the future looks like. And that happened in the last day. So if you look just point in time, the stock market responds really darn fast. But if you look in the last few weeks, what's been going on? Well, first, overall uncertainty has come down. We've seen the crisis unfold in Italy and Spain, and it's cutting out some of the absolute worst case scenarios. So if you're talking about, say, the Imperial College report that came out a month ago, estimating 2 million deaths in the US, that's probably not on the table right now. So that sort of thing makes the stock market respond positively. Okay. You also have it thinking of corporations are not you and me. So you could look at large corporations representing the S&P 500, not naming names, but they might overall be doing better than the typical individual in the US. So their cash flows might not be as hard hit during this bad time. Hence, their prices might be going up as essentials continue to be essential, and consumption continues. So your wages and the prices of S&P 500 stocks are not linked very tightly.
So your point,
they can move. Yeah.
If I can put that another way, because I've done some thinking about this, how the stock market behaves, which represents large entities, and how individuals may experience recession for several years are only very loosely coupled. And the coupling is essentially to the degree those businesses depend on consumer spending, they're related. So if I'm out of a job and can't spend, that means I can't buy an airplane ticket or I can't buy Taco Bell, then that impacts those corporations. But to the degree that their business goes on as ever, it makes no difference. Unfortunately, if I starve to death in the street, unhappy me, but that may or may not impact Megacorp X.
That's right. And this is something that economics has really only caught into in the last 25 years or so. We used to have this idea that there's a representative consumer in the economy. There's one kind of average person. So when the average person is not doing well, that's when average returns are especially high. Expected returns are especially high. But now we know there's not some representative individual. There's a lot of variation among people. And it turns out that the people in this particular decline who are hardest hit are not the investors that are setting prices. So can
you clarify that?
Typically So
so you mean that most of this loss is institutional?
Here's a very coarse way of thinking about stock markets. It is a wealth-weighted average of what people believe. So if wealthy people are still able to invest and trade freely and they're not losing their jobs because they're employed by some of these robust companies, their expectations win the day, and they're the ones who ultimately dictate what prices are in the market. It's not the person who is laid off or the 20% of Americans who are estimated to be unemployed right now using some recent data.
Which, by the way, chat, hopefully, I'm sure because we have tons of people here, some of you are those unemployed. But that is just a mind-blowing figure, speaking only for the U.S., that basically we know from unemployment claims that 1 in 7 people who was employed a month ago, 5 weeks ago, no longer is. That's just, I lack words for it, so I'll move on. And Brian's indicating that because not everybody is filed and other causes, it might be 1 in 5.
It's not just that. There's more recent data. So there's what Scott was referencing a bit obliquely was their real-time labor market estimates. And I just posted to Devin's chat, Ethan. Let me see if I can get yours as well. Your window's obscured here.
I'll toss them there.
My window's obscured.
Sure.
I'll toss them in.
Thanks.
Sure, I appreciate that. Thanks, Devin. There are other data sources in addition to the official unemployment statistics that track that track how the economy is doing in real time that we didn't have access to even the most recent recession. So we are seeing, based on those other data sources, 20.2% unemployment, which is, for those keeping score, hasn't happened since the Great Depression. So it's really, we're in for interesting time. And the question that every business leader and every individual is asking him or herself is this forever? Is this something that lasts 3 months? Is this something that lasts a year? What does new normal look like? How do we get there? So I'm leading Twitch's data response to COVID. And the big question that I get is what is sticky and what's going to change? This is not specific to me. This is everyone. So what's the path back? Is it a V? So we come back sharply? Is it a U? It takes a while to kind of reaccelerate after we've been shut down for a while. Whereas an L, where we just go down, then we're flatlined for a while. And let's hope it's not an L.
Yeah, the L scenario is not at all good. I'm enough of a geezer that I was a child through the 70s recession, the longest recession in recent memory of 6-ish years of flat stock market performance. Just different times. Like, doesn't matter right now. We're years from that. It would take years. I'm curious. First, chat's saying "holy hell" on the 20+% unemployment. Like that's unbelievable. But 1 in 5 people who had jobs a month ago don't now. Had jobs 5 weeks ago don't now. That defies imagination to see that kind of fast shift without, war.
Yes.
And so there's, again, we've said this a bunch of times in the show, there's no precedent for this, which is why everybody's trying to understand it. And clearly some of those jobs do come back. They are layoffs of businesses that are in hibernation, that are being bridged by the government. What is unknown, though, and you were talking about how the stock market reacts to knowns, what is unknown and hotly debated is how much can we reopen. I think, Brian, and certainly Devin, you're familiar with somebody who's in my chat right now, Ligerbox, who's a doctor on the front lines of the COVID response in Singapore. Singapore is seeing ballooning. Like, Singapore was one of the nations celebrated for pandemic response, and yet they're seeing ballooning cases now for various reasons. It's not clear. Hong Kong somewhat tried to reopen and had to close back down, or chose to close back down. Had to is a difficult word. Anyway, it's not clear how successfully we can reopen, which is still the that's a different type of uncertainty, but is a huge factor in this. You want to say something about that, Devin? Was that the thumbs up?
I'm just
all right.
Idiots. Yeah. Yeah. I was
thumbs
Googling
up to
how
somebody you had to ban.
I was Googling how long a week was in seconds. So it was about the amount of time that I didn't want to deal with that person anymore.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So anyway, we excuse idiots on both of our channels. So if you're an idiot visiting, be very quiet.
People, fucking a lot of PhDs in economics in chat. Maybe sit and listen to the guy who actually is one for a minute, besides telling your dumb shit opinion and platforming these fucking ideas, okay? Holy shit. Sorry.
Devin, I love it. He's been. It's always good.
What is actually what Brian is saying is not correct. The economy is going to just fucking listen in class, okay? They know something. They put work into it. Unlike you, basement dwelling troglodyte that is just sitting for free in my chat, not doing anything. All right.
Well, with that, Devin, ask a question that will educate them then. I'll give it to you. What do you want to know from Brian?
Well,
or are you too tilted to ask anything?
No, I think I'm okay. Maybe I am. I think I might need a second.
give him a tilt moment. All right, so that's good. Brian, my question, I guess, for you on your expertise would be, what will be the signals that we will have some idea of the V, the U, and the L, like, or some way to know the odds or anything? Again, it's future prognostication, but how do we start at least knowing? Because I was telling my wife, like, maybe we need to dig up the lawn and build a bunker based on some of these stats. And, she likes her lawn. It's very well manicured, so she wasn't as into that. How can we resolve this, to dig or not to dig? How will we know?
That is really tough.
We're digging. It's happening right
here. You can compromise. Dig up your neighbor's lawn. So here's the thing. Markets are predicting the future in some way. So when I see markets go up, I am cheered, even if these are large corporations, because that means that at least some set of relatively sophisticated investors believe that the apocalypse is not upon us and we're not reverting to stone tools. There are ways to try and extract signals from the stock market. I'm not sure if this stream is the right way to go there,
okay.
but you can build indexes to try and track what was moving the stock market that's also related to COVID updates. But really, the best forecasts are coming from epidemiologists, and it's tempting as a data scientist and as an economist to try and forecast and say, well, gosh, I know some statistics. I should be able to do this. But every day brings some news that, again, is out of scope of model. So I can send you another link. Again, some economists doing recreational forecasting saying they look at Italy or Spain and they're looking at R naught. So that's the reproductive rate of this virus under their shelter in place, and it's gone down to like 0.85, 0.9, which is bad. It's
barely
it's
below
1.
It will decline, but very slowly. And as soon as you change anything about shelter in place, it will go above 1
kicker.
again.
I was also really curious that you had brought up that you thought that some of the stats were like promising in America, but we haven't even hit rural America yet, where we think it's going to be really bad. There's a lot of people that are under income and have hypertension, obesity, things like that. So like, are we?
Well, Louisiana is already hard hit.
Yeah. So like we might just be like a 10th through this and not right. Like so.
Well,
to hear you say like the markets are pricing that in.
Well, the economically most productive states, and this is no judgment, but they're on the coasts. There's a reason why New York and California were hit first, and it's because they're highly interconnected, very dense, because people want to live there and work jobs that reward them with money and things. So them going through this first, I sure hope that the peak is passed for New York, but we'll see. I think that one of my friends who's a doctor in New York is on this call right now. So I hope that they're ahead of the rest of the country and they can reopen sooner, but we really don't know. I get worried when I see plans to reopen quickly, because with these R naught values, that's going to cause trouble again.
You would hope that the Italian value would be 0.5 or something, where every infected person only infects half a additional person on average under such tight restrictions. If it's really 0.85 or 0.9, that would tell, if that's accurate, that would tell us that, number one, our epidemic, we've only slowed the growth, but it will keep growing because we're not doing nearly as restrictive a shelter in place as they are. And number two, it would tell us that reopening will be extremely difficult until something changes.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, of course, that's one data point.
That's one data point.
So I want to take us another way, and I think Devin's going to be interested in this too. We've had a bunch of experts on, and no one yet has really talked about the global supply chain. Not really. Maybe because it's complex, maybe because we haven't had the right person. But I just think about the fact, and I was talking with someone in chat here about the fact, this is the first crisis I can think of, even more than World War II, that simply affected the whole world at once. And in basically the same way, because almost every state has gone shelter in place, almost every country has done some sort of social distancing and business shutdowns. What is it? Can you give us any understanding of how I wouldn't even say the 101 level course, like the 0 level, the high school level course in global supply chain. How should we understand what that means to stop that thing and restart it?
So we gotta hope that those small business loans go out to keep those firms afloat. You think about, take say GM. GM is surrounded in Michigan by various parts manufacturers.
Uh-huh.
And if those go under all at the same time, then you're not going to be able to source a new supplier for your vehicles. So suddenly it becomes really hard to build a car for what feel like dumb reasons. It's not, you
For
have
want
like
of a nail, Rome
99%
was
of a car.
lost. Is that the for
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
For want of horse. Yeah. That
Right.
sort of thing. So it's not just that these are one-off, some of these firms will go under. It's that there's a coordinated disruption of all these firms at the same time, which makes it really hard to find new suppliers if you try and start up again as a large producer. So that is that sort of ripple effect I haven't seen modeled. It's not so much my area. When I look at network economics, typically the way that so-called shocks or disruptions flow are from customers to suppliers. So it would flow from, say, GM back to those firms, rather than this is very much the other way.
It flows forward because GM needs something they can't get, which means GM can't build their car, which means when I need a car, I can't buy a GM car or the price is higher.
That's right.
So to give everybody a practical example of this, who may not be in supply chain and manufacturing, I was talking to a guy who works at a hardware firm, and his company makes popular hardware that powers part of the internet. Simple example. And one of the things they make has like 400 individual suppliers eventually supply all the little components that go on their circuit boards and all the wires and the box it goes in. And some of those 400 things they can get from lots of people. They can get the power supply from multiple people, or they can get the case made different ways. But in his case, the thing he makes has 250 what are called sole source suppliers, which means that they only get it from one company. There's only one company that makes the widget. And what's important here is if one of those companies stops making their widget, they can't, the company on top of them can't make any of their product, which means they can't sell it to us so we can use it, and they can't make money, but they also have no need to buy the other 249 things. Because if GM can make everything but the tires, they can't sell their cars without the tires. And so a car with no tires is useless. So why bother making the car, which then flows backwards to all the people who put things in the car. So I don't know, the supply chain ideally is not as fragile as I've just made it out to be. But maybe, Brian, you can speak a little bit about fragility versus resiliency in that space.
Yeah, so normally in a well-functioning economy, what would happen is if, say that there's 250 parts needed and you have 249 and that one supplier's out.
Right.
Normally, someone new would come in because they can bargain away a lot of that surplus from you as the guy producing the car, because either you've got $0 of profits from not selling a car, or you get some positive profits, and they should be able to take a lot of that. But there's not slack right now in the manufacturing sector. People aren't going to be going to a factory to retool, to jump in and respond to that price signal, the higher price that they would be able to command for that widget. So because of the particular type of disruption that we're seeing, it makes these supply chain problems that would normally be solved effectively automatically by the market, that's with a little bit of time delay, it makes it that's virtually impossible to solve those problems. You have to hope that there's some stockpile that you can draw upon to serve you in the meantime. So that sort of disruption becomes a lot more pronounced. For a single part, you lose the whole, and then that's, as you say, going to ricochet back. So that's the shock that I'm more used to as an economist, going from you want to build a car, all of your suppliers are going to be stuck because no one's going to be able to purchase the car.
Right.
So that's a strong amplifying mechanism that we're seeing. Now, currently, we don't see that amplifying mechanism because no one is, well, at least not many are producing in the same way that they were before. There are some essential manufacturers that are. But when we start having a slow reopening, there's going to be shortages of critical parts. And it's going to be really challenging to make a slow reopening not just lead to business failures of firms that are open, but have counterparts that are not. It's going to be hard to phase that right.
What does that mean? Are we fucked? I'm sorry, my chat's trying to spell bear, and they can't do it. I can tell them I gift them a sub if they spelled bear, and they can't do it. Look at them; they're so close. You almost had it. Oh, you're so close.
There's an actual parallel between what's going on in Chad and what's going on in the economy, and that parallel is this is a coordination problem.
Draw me this analogy.
So there's a coordination problem in that there's no authority that can properly instruct your chat because Devin, you don't have control over all those memers over there. There's no authority that can tell them you do B, you do E, and enforce that.
But I stimulated the economy by providing a potential gift sub.
Okay, so that helps.
I created jobs.
You created incentives,
Yeah, I created jobs.
Yeah, so if you had a message attached to that gift sub and did that 4 times, then you'd be good. You'd be golden. That's how the stimulus would work. But back to the macroeconomy, you'd have to have a very carefully phased, centrally planned program for bringing the economy back online. And it's hard to get a complex economy going properly through central planning. There's a reason why we don't do that typically.
Yeah.
So we can try having lighter touch regulations on what sorts of activities can happen rather than where they happen. I've been reading about that sort of thing. So, well, maybe you can't have people within 6 feet of each other. So you could have them in a factory as long as they're 10 feet away, something like that. Who knows? Maybe there's some way of doing it so that the market can work it out by itself. But basically, in short, we're in trouble. Coordinating a reopening is really hard. You're seeing early evidence from that from China, in part because there's no one around to buy their stuff. So that's another dimension of it. There's this staggering of who's reopening when. So China reopening early means that, well, the US isn't buying stuff, or at least not in the same quantity. So now there's a demand-driven economic shock that China's facing. So the fact that everyone's going through it, but is going to be coming out at slightly different times, makes this even harder to deal with.
So, Devin, Brian, there's a tradition I've started my channel where I do what's called a speed run of the questions people have put in my Q&A tool. And the idea is to answer each question in 30 seconds or less, cool. to answer it as short as possible. Would you mind if I run through those with Brian real quick? There's only a few.
Dude, you've got I love how you have Q&A going on and this is Ethan's chat versus ours. We've got hundreds of people trying to
spell bear.
There's a few people that are trying to control the mass and be if we all work together, one of us can win. Meanwhile, there's people in Ethan's chat. They're what are the economic implications of the Nikkei and the Asia Pacific Ocean? And it's just,
oh man! All right, we'll do this quick. So
you guys are so close.
This is the dumbest. This one's easy. Brian, I'll do this one as an example. Is this going to affect students that are going to graduate is this going to affect students that are soon going to graduate or are going to graduate sometime in the future in terms of employment? Yes. You're going into a shitty economy. It's going to be hard to get jobs. You're going to need to take what you can, maybe, and try and stand out, have a network, watch the other shows. But yes, it's going to impact you for sure.
A lot of
I'd add on. Go ahead.
A lot of the content that Ethan and I have done, which is highlighted on our channels and on YouTube, is very relevant to this and helps you stand out.
Totally. It's all over my website.
Add on to this.
Yeah, go ahead, Brian.
I was a 2009 baby in terms of I graduated into 2009 job market. So having had that experience, I'm very grateful that I went to grad school at that time rather than leap into the private sector because, well, my offer was rescinded. So I didn't even have the option anymore. If you look at some of the long-term outcomes and the academic evidence, and this is surprisingly scant, if you look at long-term outcomes, people who graduate into recessions have just a mix of bad. That bad consists of lower lifetime incomes. And it's not just now, it's forever. Unless you change jobs pretty frequently early in your career. Because as Ethan said, your first job probably isn't going to be your best choice outside of a recession. So you get suboptimal jobs, suboptimal training, suboptimal pay, which then feeds into later pay. It's always anchored on what you had last. Happiness seems like maybe it equalizes at 50, but there's also more health problems because, well, if you have less money and you're not in the career that you're looking for, you probably aren't doing as well in terms of psychological well-being. So evidence seems like it's a mix of bad, and you have to take what you can get and be willing to swap quickly and adapt.
All right, Brian. Excellent depth. More than 30 seconds.
My bad.
No, that's okay. That's good. You can have a minute. You're a special guest, but I
won't do it again.
No, it's okay. Have population-wide stimulus packages in the past promoted spending at a noticeable level? How much is this a reliable solution versus a cheap Band-Aid?
Yeah, so people spend cash when they get cash. That
they use DoorDash. We've seen this.
People spend cash.
The question you're good. So wait, is it going to work or is it a Band-Aid? Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the part. There's also less stuff that you can spend cash on. You can spend it on Twitch. Feel free to do that. Devin's channel, Ethan's channel needs more subscribers. Yep. But your typical opportunities for spending aren't there.
Community gifting, just saying. Along with my team. I don't want to take credit. Actually, it was Bobby Scarnaman and some other people. But anyway.
So if Bobby's a great guy, I hope he's here. So you don't have the same opportunities to spend as before.
Okay.
Which means that this is a supply-driven shock, and this is not a cure for all our ails.
So
it can pay rent.
It can help, but it's not a complete solution. It's a bridge. Yes. Okay.
Yes.
It's a bridge back to a normal economy. Hopefully. Yes. Ideally. That's the gamble.
Yes.
Okay. New challenge. Okay. If you type bear, I'll give you one gifted sub. But if you type Brian, Brian, that's our guest. If you type Brian, I'll gift you sub and 5 subs. 5 subs to the whole chat, or 5 subs to people of your choice. If you type Brian, Brian, and all in separate lines, and you have to make it work. Brian. Okay, go.
Oh, there we go. And right. Sean123, one of my good friends, and also a booze supplier, gifting the 20 tier 1 subs in my chat. So thank you, Sean. You get a shout out even in the middle of a shared show for that.
Any leprechauns? Any tiger owners?
Oh, in Devin's chat, now that there's been 20 subs here, it'll be either Kafira or 212 Phantom dropping 1,000 subs. It's never been done before, but 1,000 subs in Devin's chat.
You're so crazy.
Anyway, thank you, Sean. All right, we'll roll a couple other questions here real quick while they attempt to spell Brian, of which there is no hope. Should you depart from conventional portfolio theory in the middle of a recession? Don't answer that directly, because the real question is, assuming you had a lump sum, are there not once-in-a-lifetime opportunities for investment if you have cash? So I have some money in the bank. Can I buy now and be a tiger owner for Devin in the future?
Probably not in the stock market, or at least It's hard to identify in the stock market. The problem with with the stock market is that it's too easy to trade. The opportunities for your cash, for these once in a lifetime trades, are when someone needs cash immediately, they're liquidity constrained, and you are their only hope. So these are small companies that desperately need your cash right now to stay solvent. These are not your big publicly traded companies. They have a large investor base that they could potentially draw on in times of trouble. So I'd be hard pressed to identify them, but think about nearby local businesses maybe as a way of potentially investing your cash, not something that has access to public markets.
So don't go beat the market. That's like, you might get lucky, but you're essentially gambling. But you might have local knowledge of a local business where you could get in on something really good that you can see working, and that could turn into something big. Accurate summary?
Yes.
Fast.
Effectively something that's like giving a bridge loan.
Awesome. Very cool. All right. This one confuses me, and I want to know the answer because I kind of think bonds are useless. But the question is, since bonds are inversely related to interest rates, does buying bonds ever make sense when rates are virtually zero?
Well, there's a reason why rates are zero. There's a supply and demand to it. There's a demand for bonds or for safety at any price. That's what drives the interest rate to zero. Now, there's monetary policy that certainly has a helping hand. But the fact that investors in general want bonds, now not as many bonds are being issued right now, but in general want bonds, that's what pushes the price down. It's not some magic equilibrium mechanism. Now, if you're running, say, a pension, that's harder. 0% is not going to service your liabilities if you're underfunded. So you're going to have to search for yield elsewhere. But yeah, there's a place for bonds because it's relatively safe. If you absolutely need a dependable source of income and aren't thinking about reaping a large upside.
So it's a super secure place to store your money, either forever if you can live off that, or otherwise just short term. It's not going to go down.
It's not liquid either, though, right? You can't pull out of it easily.
You can. For individual bonds, for corporate debt, that might be harder for you and me, but certainly bond ETFs are really easy to invest in. So these are exchange traded funds. So they trade like a stock, but they're claims to bonds.
Do they follow bonds like just 1-to-1 basically?
It used to be popular that way, but now it's mostly index.
Okay.
Yeah. So you buy investment grade index bonds.
What I'm asking though is
good to go.
What I'm asking is that actually basically like, is there any other like funny business going on? Or are those basically 1-to-1 with like the way that the bond market is going?
It's basically 1-to-1. There is a little funny business in the background and how kind of prices adjust for the underlying bonds and how the kind of shares of the ETF work, but nothing that affects investment returns for the typical individual. Nothing that we need to think too carefully about.
Mm-hmm.
So there's one more question. This is the last one we'll do, and then we'll turn it back to Devin for any wrap up, and then we'll let everybody go home. As a CS major halfway through my degree, should I focus on looking for internships and part-time tech jobs or extracurriculars like Kaggle and personal projects? This one's really for me, I think. And my answer is evaluating your resume for a job. I'd much rather see you were able to work in an internship or a part-time tech job than your personal projects. The personal project is a great backup when you can't do the former. And I assume both of you you feel the same about that, right? Like You'd rather see them work at a job than do even a fairly interesting personal project on a 1-to-1 comparison.
Yeah, for sure. In part because you're going to be exiting into a very competitive job market. So if you're not the person doing that internship, someone else is that you're competing against. So it seems like a good time to work on pet projects, but in fact, this is a really tough time to do that because it just makes you that much less competitive relative to normal times.
Yeah, so that's your backup. What isn't listed here is you should do the personal projects rather than do nothing. Keep Twitch on in the background, but not just as your sole occupation.
Which is good advice in general.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So Devin, I'm about ready to wrap it up, Domi.
Jesus, how do you know that meme?
Oh, come on.
How do you
I know
that
you.
Oh, how do you? But that's a train meme.
Of course, but you're like a train disciple.
My God.
Affiliate.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm about ready to wrap it up. Is there anything you want to ask Brian as an exit, as a last thing?
Hell yeah, dude. I'm going to go for an Ethan question. Brian,
five head, here it comes.
what is it that you want people to know about this? Since like you've got a platform and you can speak to a lot of people about that are worried and concerned, whose anxiety levels are higher. What do you tell them from your perspective as a economist and a person carefully following this from that perspective?
So the one thing that I would say is be careful with your spending. There's so much uncertainty right now, and yes, more of it is resolved day to day, and you can see that in the VIX or volatility index. It keeps coming down, but the volatility index doesn't measure whether your employer is going to be around or whether you're still going to have a job there. So that cash that is, I hope, being wired to most accounts in chat. It's not something to kind of go wild on. This is a time to be careful. I know that at Twitch and Amazon and everywhere else, we wonder, what does the future hold? And there are a bunch of bad futures out there. And precautionary saving is one of the easiest ways to guard against that. And something that we saw coming out of the Great Depression was that people who had that experience and went through it became more risk averse and more savings prone for the rest of their lives. And that seems like the right behavior here.
Would you say
wow.
Yeah.
A Great Depression level impact on societal behavior. That's a sweeping statement. For my chat, I pulled up the volatility index as an image. There's a spike in it that's basically as high as any piece of recorded recent history. Right now. So.
Just to give a reference, a month ago, almost to the day, it hit its absolute high of 80, which it means that a one standard deviation change in the stock market is plus or minus 80% of value.
I don't understand that. Can you explain that better?
Yeah.
Or sorry, can you explain it to someone like me?
Yep. Sure. So the volatility index was saying that there is at least call it 30% chance that the market is going to fall by at least 80% in the next year.
Whoa.
That's what I was saying a month ago. Now it's down to 38. So there's now a 30% chance that the market is going to move at least minus 40% in the next year. So it's come down by half, moved down.
Yeah.
So it's come down by half, but it's still at very high levels.
Yeah, but the difference is a 38% drop in the market, or a 38% drop in the market is a scary but historically precedented event in modern times.
Yes.
An 80% drop in the market has really no precedent, like calamity. Anyway,
Great Depression is the one.
Yeah. That would be bad. That would be very bad. That's like, don't cross the streams. That would be bad. So with that, anything else, David? Otherwise, we can thank Brian and let him go.
I have a lot more, but
Oh no, you can.
Yeah.
It's totally good. I'm gonna end up for my chat. Well, let's do this. I have to go. Do you want to bring Brian? I don't know, Brian. Can you stay and talk to Devin, or you said you're
sure.
apart?
Yeah, happy to.
Are you sure? It's because I don't want to like Ethan. Like, it's a co-show, so like I'm
No.
Yeah.
That's
go
totally
for it.
fine.
That's all right. It's a Friday night. What do I have to do?
I would assume like
I'm not going out.
Yeah, I have family that I'm gonna go visit with. But what I can do, Devin, why don't you send a Zoom link over to Brian, and I'll raid the folks here who want to go. I'll raid them over to your channel. For anybody, I apologize. I need to go, but it'd be great if you want to keep hearing. And I'll raid over to Devin's channel, And then Devin and I will be back together Tuesday at 5 with Dr. Vincent Racaniello.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And so we'll have him on Twitch, and we'll talk about the pandemic side of going back to work. But by all means, take advantage of Brian's availability, and I will take advantage of dinner. And so those are both valid outcomes.
Okay. Well, yeah, I'd love to chat with Brian a bit. That'd be cool.
All right. So I'll hang up on him and you here in a second. But until then, it's great seeing you, Devin. Brian, thank you for always bringing us incredible guests. And you guys have a good night tonight. And for all of my chat, I'm going to start the raid now. And I will see you all back here Tuesday. For my chat and for Devin's chat, please come with us. We're going to be on the Twitch front page with usually about 5,000 viewers when we have Dr. Racaniello.
Yeah.
And we love to have our own chat here to keep the unruly hooligans in order on the front page. So come on back and represent our community really well as we learn from the virologist how we can all be safe when we go back out of the world, or do we actually just need to dig bunkers in our neighbors' yards, which was solid advice.
Have a great weekend, Ethan.
All right.
Ethan, it was super cool to do this with you, man. I hope we have you and I need to do a show where we have some kind of
standing thing.
Yeah. I number one, not having them has made me realize how much I miss them, and I will actually actively start. I've been going through a content crisis. Yeah, so I will actively start trying to think about
what you'd want to do. You're my friend, my deep friend for life here. So
back at you, brother.
Let's figure it out, and I'm always in.
Some wholesome shit.
All right, man. Here you go, everybody. Let's go join Devin, and cheers and good night. I'll hang up the call, and you can jump right back on.
Okay, Brian, Discord me real quick.
All right, we'll do.
And I'll hit you up. All right.